Hey guys, welcome back to the Friday vlog where we discuss activity that goes on here with the channel, current events, headlines that are in the news, technology, and items of interest that come up during the week that allow us to have a little bit of a dialogue. As you guys are always welcome to make your comments down in the published section. If this is your first time here, I'd like to welcome you to the channel and encourage you guys to click on that watermark down there in the bottom right-hand corner to subscribe, as your participation here is always appreciated. This week in gaming, Thursday, September the 6th, we're going to have the Battlefield 5 beta release. So I'm looking forward to that. I did pre-order the game hoping that I would get into alpha, but that didn't happen. And there is still quite a bit of controversy surrounding the game, but I do want to get in and see what the gameplay is like. There was a huge patch note release, so there's going to be a tremendous amount of changes to the game that I think the developers are hoping will attract players despite some of the controversies that have been surrounding the game. So I'll get some footage on that and get back to you guys next week, hopefully with some gameplay footage. So this week in the lay social media of Facebook and in standard social media, we have the newest announcement from Nike that Colin Kaepernick will be the face of their advertising. And if you guys aren't familiar with Colin Kaepernick, he was a former football player for the San Francisco 49ers, was actually a pretty good quarterback, at least in his introduction to the 49ers. And essentially what happened was he was kneeling during the national anthem, which kind of set off a continuing protest of other football players. But basically it's this. The national anthem here in the United States, particularly during football, is to honor our country, is essentially what it is. It's kind of a ceremony. People don't kneel during a funeral. People don't kneel during a wedding. People don't kneel during a dedication, at least not in the sense of a protest. And so these individuals are really just doing this to capture attention. Sure, they could go on their own platforms on social media themselves, or they could call a press conference, but they know that individuals may not see them on ESPN News, or they may not see them on their particular platforms and social media. So naturally, they're going to go in front of cameras when they have the opportunity to do this. So they're basically injecting themselves into a dedicated ceremony specifically for the purpose of honoring our country. Now, they do have their rights, of course, to express themselves, and they can do this via their platforms or via the different social media outlets that they have, and of course their own platforms. So they have the opportunity to protest if they like, but of course they want to capture the attention of millions of captive audiences that are preparing to watch the game. So nonetheless, I don't have any particular issues with Nike in and of themselves. I don't purchase any of their products, haven't for years, so I'm not about to burn anything that I may have, as some people have. But if they want to protest it, that's totally up to them. But my thoughts on it are this: it's clear that Colin could use his own personal platforms to be able to deliver his message, and now Nike is going to get involved here. We call this in social media the Get Woke movement. And so far, the Get Woke movement has not really worked. As a matter of fact, there's a little bit of a saying that's going around social media now called Get Woke, Go Broke. And so this isn't really working. As a matter of fact, we can see this even in Battlefield 5, where some of that controversy around what's going on with the game is part of that Get Woke movement ideology. And although these people want to be inclusive and want to feel inclusive, the Get Woke movement is not necessarily working out the way a lot of people think. And I think Nike may be getting a little more backlash from this than they would have anticipated. We had a series of hearings this week, more specifically Brett Kavanaugh, who will be the next Supreme Court Justice. So don't concern yourselves with that. That is really more political theater than anything else. His confirmation hearings will go through, and he will become the next Supreme Court Justice. I do want to make mention here that there was kind of a coordinated effort by these same Get Woke individuals that I spoke about earlier, who seemed to time their little protests at really interesting little intervals during this exchange. So again, Brett Kavanaugh is going to be appointed the next Supreme Court Justice, and this whole confirmation is just political theater. But what I really wanted to talk about was Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg and Jack Dorsey from Twitter, who were also appearing before Congress this week in relationship to just the general election time rigging that President Trump was talking about. But more specifically, I'd like to talk about the fact that he was appearing there. And this weekend, it would appear that many of the individuals that were shadow banned are now not shadow banned. I'm going to include a link down in the published section there so you can check accounts on whether they are shadow banned or not shadow banned. But I know that Styx Hexenhammer mentioned that his account had been removed from shadow banned, and I also noticed that I looked it up myself. I looked up several accounts, and they all appear to be removed from the shadow ban list, or what's called the QFD, the quality filter control. So that's very interesting, and I think he made this move because he was going to be at these hearings and was going to have to answer questions about people that have been discussing the fact that they have been shadow banned, or certain groups of individuals have been shadow banned. Now, of course, most of what I was able to watch so far, because of course this recording is taking place before actually Friday, I haven't seen them get to that point yet, but what they were talking about when I was watching some of the hearings was that revolving around the next midterm election. Now, as you know, campaigns have been around for many years. We have advertisement in radio, television, magazines, newspapers, all across the board. So this idea that individuals were being somehow affected by Russian bots, or can be affected by outside influences in other countries, this has been going on for a very long time in that regard. So now I will admit that social media does have a very impactful effect in the community or in the United States, because it's kind of one of those soundbite moments, those little pieces of information that people can grab real quick through Twitter or through Facebook or Instagram or other types of messages. So I can kind of see that there is levels of concern. Now, I may have mentioned to you last week that it was determined that about 20%, I don't have the actual stats here or where that stat was actually accumulated. I had seen it in an article and I heard someone else mention it, but that up to 20% of people may have been affected by certain advertisements that do happen on social media, because some people that are very social media savvy or use social media a great deal are going to be there and see this information. But you have to remember too, the greater portion of the United States is not necessarily using social media. Yes, it is something that can reach lots and lots of people, and of course, even here on YouTube, we can see that thousands, if not millions of people view content every single day, or the fact that even why Alex Jones was removed, because he had so much of an influence and impact in society, and it was even mentioned that he was part of Donald Trump getting elected. However, it's just this. I believe that the American people are able to make very simple distinctions. Common sense, everyday Americans are able to make common sense distinctions and know what type of advertisement is suggesting one thing and what type of advertisement is suggesting another. And I don't think that advertising in and of itself, by itself, is going to sway anybody. It might reinforce some ideologies. It might shed some light on some information about a particular candidate, but it's not necessarily going to be any type of guarantee that the person is going to vote for one person or the other. As a matter of fact, look at the polls. CNN, ABC, NBC, all these polls that they had prior to the election were all inaccurate. They were all wrong, because sometimes when you talk to people, they're going to tell you one thing and they're going to do another. That's just human nature. So this interesting hearing that's going on this week with Dorsey and Sandberg is going to be one that we will watch very closely, because what these representatives say sometimes may not always be completely clear, or most people aren't going to be aware of what the questioning or line of questioning is directed to do. But in the end, we'll have to see how this is going to affect both platforms, whether it's Facebook and or Twitter. But I mean, Dorsey has been pretty much upright about his thoughts and his ideologies and his philosophies, and he has no problem censoring people out. The other discussion that people have is, well, these individuals or these companies are private institutions that can enforce whatever rules they want. This is absolutely correct. The argument isn't whether or not people have the First Amendment right or have a right on private platforms to speak. The thing here is, are they equally distributing the terms of service? Are they equally being fair to individuals? Now, if you want to shut people down, you can do that, but are you being fair with your exercise of terms of service? So this whole argument about, oh, First Amendment, privacy, this, that, and the other, now this is a tired argument. This First Amendment thing has been going on for a long time when it comes to platforms on social media. The idea here is the terms of service being implemented fairly? That is really the argument. And we know that people are being shadow banned because we have tools, we have metrics to see when our platforms are being censored. We can see that in our metrics. It's obvious. So this was a very interesting time right now as we do approach the midterms, because I think we're going to be seeing more of this influence. But I am glad to see that this is being addressed early, because perhaps certain groups or certain individuals will be able to have their platforms returned to them and be able to reach those audiences that they want to be able to reach. So we will keep an eye on this and see how this follows up. And that's going to wrap it up for this Friday vlog. Thank you guys so very much for your support. Consider clicking that like button, and as you see here appearing on the screen, that channel icon, guys, click on that to subscribe to the channel, and then the bell if you want to continue to get the Friday vlogs along with other content that's covered here on the channel. And I will see you guys next Friday.